Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of A Little Jaded. We are super excited for today's episode. I'm going to pass it over to Joanna, my longtime co-host.
Hi guys, I hope everyone's doing well and welcome back to another episode. So I'm really excited to be here today with our guest. You can tell by the title, we're here with Kristina London, who is a young music industry professional. She's located in Los Angeles, but she hails from the East Coast and she currently is a social media manager at Golden Voice, but also you may know her mostly as the founder of Amplify Her Voice. I'm sure you've heard of it. It is an organization that advocates for gender equality in the music industry. And in case you haven't heard of Golden Voice is one of the largest promoters in the world that hails behind a lot of venues, a lot of festivals, and you probably know it best because of things like Coachella, huge. And yeah, thanks for being here, Kristina.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, you got me covered on my bio, but yeah, I founded Amplify Her Voice almost 4 years ago. Wow. And have been at Golden Voice for a year now. So it's been a crazy few years.
That's so amazing. I can't believe that was 4 years ago, for real.
Yeah.
I mean, and in 4 years, it's already created like so much of a positive impact, and so many people have heard of Amplify Her Voice, and it's provided positivity and created new space in the industry, for women and women identifying. So what inspired you to kind of create this awesome organization?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I was in college. I was doing music internships and part-time jobs and pretty much anything I could do to get some experience in the music industry. Growing up in the DC area, it wasn't very common to work in music or to try to pursue a career in the music industry. So the opportunities were very, very limited. And immediately off the bat, I noticed I was either the only woman on the team or one of very few. And especially situations revolving like gender pay gap and sexual harassment is very rampant, especially in live music. And so I'm very data driven, and I found the USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative and saw the data behind how many women were in the music industry. And it was, I think, putting in the context of data, it's just mind blowing. And from there, I was like, well, I want to get the word out. Like, I feel like I haven't seen anything about this. Like, I didn't know about that. And so I just started creating an Instagram page highlighting the statistics so more people could see the sort of truth behind the gender disparity in music. And I think so many women, I'm sure both of you have your own like anecdotal experiences talking about, maybe sexual harassment, or maybe being the only woman in the room, or maybe not having your voice weigh as heavy as a man's voice when making decisions. And, those anecdotal experiences can only go so far, especially when you're speaking to, people who've been in the industry for a long time, or like, typically older white men. But when you put the data behind it, it's, to me, there's no argument. It's like, here is like hard data that says this. And, from there with Amplify Her Voice, I wanted to try to make steps to make the music industry more accessible for women and non-men and any allies that want to, get involved with us, but also, a safe place, an empowering place. But yeah, it kind of blew up. I had no intentions to create a company or anything, but here we are.
No, that's amazing. And I mean, when I was kind of starting out in the industry too, I was just looking like, where are all the resources that I can find? And I found Amplify Her Voice, and it was amazing. And I guess for anybody who might not follow you and like be familiar with your guys' content, like you guys post a lot of amazing content. You guys also hold different events and stuff like that. So just a little like sidebar, I was just curious, what was it like for you taking on that leadership position and like being like, okay, like this is kicking off. Now I have to do something with it.
Oh my God, it was terrifying. I'm like, I don't know. I would say I have a strong opinion, but I'm like shy. I'm a little introverted. I don't like being perceived. Like, I'm pretty much like probably anyone else. So it's scary putting something out there and having people comment on it or talk about it. And especially it didn't like blow up, but in the first year we gained 10,000 followers. And it was just like, great. I was like, oh, this is sick. But also it's like, it's weird having people know your name or like know something you made. And, especially when we started doing events and virtual events, like it was awesome. But it's at the same time, when we first started it, it was just kind of scary speaking to 300 people or whatever. And then, you question yourself. You're like, am I even like qualified to give this information out? Like I've been through the journey myself. I struggled trying to find opportunities in the music industry, but I guess at the time, I didn't think my firsthand experience mattered that much. It does. I think Amplifier Voice has proven that it does, but organizations like Fan to Band, Women Music, She's Music, like, I mean, I think a lot of those like sort of grassroots organizations that just started from someone with an idea, I think people are more than qualified and it clearly works. And I mean, it's really awesome. I know like our events are something that's really important to me because I feel like that's some way we can really impact people. We do a lot of networking events and we do a lot of virtual workshops. And we're going to do a lot more of those in 2023. But yeah, I mean, it's scary putting yourself out there.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we all deal with imposter syndrome, but I mean, I know you and Jade are both founders of companies, and like, we talk about imposter syndrome all the time and how crazy it feels. Like you said, like people like listening to you, and 10,000 people, don't diminish 10,000 people. That's so many people within the first year. That's kind of insane. That's a huge milestone.
Yeah, it was exciting. And we sort of, I think statistically, we're gaining around like 15,000 about every year, which I'm like, there's got to be a cap at some point, right? Like, how many more people are there? But I think that, every year there's people who are entering college and, or just want a career path when like a different career when they're 30. And I just love that we can be a resource for them.
Yeah. And I mean, whether it's like reaching a certain amount of followers or like somebody messages you and they're like, hey, this really helped me. I feel like a lot of founders, they have that moment, or they talk about that moment where they feel like, oh, I made it, or oh, I really made a difference. So have you had like specifically a moment that stands out to you, or like how would you describe that feeling?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's the small moments. I think one of the not bigger, but one of the more meaningful ones to me was I was at South by Southwest, this year, so early March 2022. COVID's still just like winding down a bit, and you've hardly interacted with anyone in the music industry for like 2+ years. And we had a panel called Making Live Music Sexual Harassment Free, and it was sick. It was awesome. But after the panel, a bunch of like college girls, maybe like 10 college age girls and some guys came up to me and my mentor at the time who was speaking on the panel. And they were like, oh, this is so cool. Like, how can we get involved? And I was like, oh, well, you should look up Amplify Her Voice on, our website or whatever. And all of them were like, oh, I already follow, I already know. And I was like, what? Like, and these kids were from like Minnesota or something, like nowhere near me. And it was just so crazy to see that in person. So I think like sometimes, I think it's part of the imposter syndrome where you're like, is this like big? Maybe it's not. Like maybe this is just like small and niche, but that's fine. Or other times you're like, this is so sick. We're reaching so many people. And I go back and forth between that. But that was one of those moments where I just was kind of stunned that people even knew what Amplify was. So I think that was a big one for me.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. You just like you just come off stage, you're talking to all these people, and then these other people come up to you and they tell you that they already know what
Yeah,
you're doing.
it's sick.
Like that would be so insane, like to hear about it. But I could also see, like you said, how it could like activate some imposter syndrome. Like, I've never met you before and you already know about me and what I'm doing, like
Yeah.
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 That's so cool to know that you guys are reaching that many people, though. I that's like such a wonderful impact, and like the things that you guys are doing, it speaks more to volumes to what you guys are doing. It's insane. It's wonderful.
Yeah. We
So
try.
yeah, exactly. But along with your work at Amplify Her Voice, you also serve as a social media manager for one of the biggest entertainment companies, Golden Voice. So, social media and marketing, as we've seen, is a very popular career interest. A lot of people are interested in doing that. So, can you describe what a typical day looks like in your work at Golden Voice?
Ooh, a typical day.
And I'm sure every day looks different, but
Yeah.
as
I'd
much
say, like,
as best you can kind of encompass it.
let's say like 10 a.m. you got a festival announced, so you got to get your socials ready, you got your copy ready. Festival announced gets pushed to 12 p.m. So you're like, okay, never mind. A lot of organizing. I am a huge organizer. I like to make databases to streamline content as much as possible. So probably in between then, I'll work on that. Got the good old festival announced at 12 p.m. now. Then it gets bumped to 4 p.m. So you're like, okay, great, never mind. So I also work on a newsletter that goes out. Everyone subscribe. It goes out to 1 million people. So it's a little scary sometimes, but we just include our just announced shows, coming up shows, I don't know, any big moments we had of the week. And we do that weekly. So I usually work on that from Monday to like Wednesday. And I mean, it takes pretty much all of Monday, all of Tuesday, a lot of Wednesday, but that would be a big portion of my day. Let's say that festival announce happens. So we announce it. I get the dopamine of people liking the post. Announces are like our biggest, what's the word? Best performing posts. So for me as a social media manager, I just eat it all up. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, it's a mixture of organization, announces getting postponed a lot. Trying to think, newsletter, branding, probably not explaining this well, but it's a healthy mix of all of the above. And it's a lot of fun. We're a very small team at Golden Voice. It's like one marketing manager per venue, typically, maybe like, I could be getting this wrong, but like 1 or 2 marketing managers per festival. So for how big of a production it is, it's crazy how efficient people are at getting stuff done. But yeah, sometimes it's a lot of fun posts, announces, I don't know, all that good stuff. Other times it's just trying to source photos and source things and try to keep our audience engaged. Sometimes it's a hit tweet, which I had one this year at Coachella that Phoebe Bridgers quote tweeted, and I have it framed on my desk, and it was amazing. But yeah, I mean, promoter life is really fun. Live events is really fun. It's all the free shows you could ask for. I got burnt out of shows this year because there were so many. I think I went to like maybe like 7 music festivals. I can't even count the amount of shows, but
That's
way
amazing.
too many. But yeah, it's a
That's
cool job.
amazing. Like the being at the point where you're burnt out of shows. Like I love shows, and I can't even imagine being like, you know what, I'm actually tired. I don't want to go
I
to
know. I never thought I'd get there, but I kind of did. But the last show I went to, the Lindas, I saw them
awesome.
maybe mid-December. Oh, they were incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. So when you're at these shows, do you do a lot of show coverage? Also, is that a big part of your job?
No, luckily. Sometimes like Coachella, I'll do like through the Golden Voice handles. That's really fun because we're known for Coachella, so it's what people engage with the most, and I can be a little more like unhinged. Otherwise, like unless I'm doing specific festival socials, we typically outsource to an agency, but sometimes we'll do it in-house. I'm doing that right now for a couple of festivals, and it's a lot of work leading up to it, but then on-site socials for those festivals, you're working from 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. just constantly posting. So I mean, I'm not about to complain about posting on social media, but it's a lot of work to just continuously think of ideas and keep it going, especially to the standard that Golden Voice definitely tries to keep.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I can't imagine like the feeling of being like, oh my God, I'm gonna work for Golden Voice. Like just hearing the name Golden Voice, you're like, oh my God, Coachella. Like that's immediately what you go to, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess I was also kind of curious about, because I feel like a lot of the social media and digital careers nowadays are so remote because you just you just stay at home, you do your posting, you do your little TikToks or whatever, and then maybe you'll travel in for like an event or something like that. So I was curious how that's been for you, because I assume since now you relocated to LA, was that a requirement for the job?
It was. They hired me when I was in the DC area, but they gave me like 7 weeks to move. But I did want to move. I was
Mhm.
dying to move to LA. We're in office like 3, 4 days a week. I mean, I feel pretty lucky because I know a lot of companies are pretty strict about being in office, but it's a very laid back work culture there. But like realistically, I can do my job from anywhere
Mhm.
because it's all digital. I don't really have to interact with anyone in person. I just post from my phone, post from my desktop. I can organize everything in just a, 13-inch laptop. It's crazy how even just the past 5 years work has changed to be so accessible remotely. So, but we are in office, and at first we weren't in office full days a week, or like at least most of the week. And I liked working from home, but I definitely see the value in being in office and, getting out of my apartment and being able to just work in this one space. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, you talked about how you were dying to move to LA, or like you moved to a big city. And I feel like, I'm not located in a big city. I know Jade's not located in a big city. A lot of times we're just like, oh my God, I want to get there. I want to be involved where all the craziness is happening. And I feel like that's what a lot of aspiring music professionals want. Like they're considering moving to LA or, New York, maybe Nashville, like all of these like big hubs where everything's happening. And you went from studying at the University of Maryland on the East Coast and then graduating, coming to LA, coast to coast. So what would your advice be to those who are kind of getting ready to leave home or considering it? And like, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've wanted to work in the music business specifically since I was in 8th grade. And that was pretty much when I decided, like, if my choices are New York, Nashville, or LA, I'm gonna pick LA. And it was something I was working towards since, high school. So I think my first advice would be save at least $10,000 if you can. That's what I
That's a
did.
good one.
Took forever, but save as much money as you can. It costs a lot to move. LA is expensive, New York's expensive. Nashville, I hear, is pretty affordable, but it's expensive being in a major city. So that was advice someone gave to me. I took it, and I probably spent like $7,000, $8,000 moving. I drove across the country. So, that's hotels, that's gas, it's the first month's deposit, it's first month's rent, it's, I had to buy all new furniture. It's expensive, but I had the money and I knew it was going to be spent on this move specifically. So save up your money. Second piece of advice I'd say, it's tough. Like even the DC area, which I guess DC is a major city. I don't really know. The music scene, there's just not many opportunities. So I totally feel that, you know, frustration of kind of not being in the place where it's happening. Moving to LA, like so much is happening there. It's overstimulating. It's overwhelming, I think, compared to what I was used to. But there's so many great networking opportunities, so many shows all the time. They probably have like 4 times the amount of venues that DC has, so many jobs, so many opportunities, so many festivals, just so much everything. And I mean, I would say go for it, but I would also, I think one thing I struggled with moving is I moved for my job. So I feel like I felt a lot of pressure to love my job and to work really hard and to spend all waking hours of my time there on my job because, and on Amplify because I moved. I left my family. I left all my friends. I left my perfect little dog who I had to leave with my parents because she's reactive and just would not do well in a 300 square foot studio apartment. I left my boyfriend. It's like you're leaving everything behind, but it was definitely worth it. And, make sure you're maintaining relationships, make sure you're really just figuring out what your values are. If it's family and friends, make sure you're traveling home enough. If it's, I think it's easy to sort of lose touch when you're so focused on work, but definitely balance is the biggest piece of advice I would offer next to the $10,000.
No, I love that. I as somebody who is considering the move.
Same, same.
Yeah, in a couple of in well, oh my gosh, yeah, it's January, a couple months. Oh man.
Wow.
It's
Terrifying.
2023.
It's so, I keep saying like next year, like every time
Right?
we and it's
Right.
just
I'm like, oh, I'm
it's already
graduating next year. No, that's this
yeah,
year. That's
nah,
this
it's
year.
this year.
Oh
That's
my
this
gosh.
year. That's terrifying. But yeah, I can't remember when we talked, but I remember you saying the 10,000, and I have been taking that. I took that to heart, and I have been doing that. So yeah, we're slowly but surely, it does take a long time getting there, but yeah, I definitely, and I, that second piece of advice, I don't think I've heard that from you before, so it's always great to hear that, like, where, try and do, like, understand where your values lie, and make sure you're doing that enough. I think that's also something that's like really important to consider in a really far move, considering that you came from Maryland all the way to LA.
Yeah, opposite side of the country.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Very exciting, but yeah, I don't know. I also didn't know anyone when I moved. I moved completely alone and kind of went into it blind. So maybe meet some people in the city first. I would probably recommend that too.
Yeah,
I feel like a big part of it is like, everyone wants to move because like, oh, I want to live in LA. Like, I want to be where everything is. Like, it's going to be so amazing. And the reality is that is like, you might not know that many people. Like, you have to basically start from scratch. Like, the great thing about it is that there's so many opportunities, but there's also more people trying to pursue that. So it's intimidating.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so true. I mean, it's so isolating. I think LA in particular, you have to drive everywhere and whatever, but there's something about it. I don't know. For me, it was super overstimulating and overwhelming because you're not driving, on these like DC freshly paved empty roads. You're driving on compact, like congested, just crazy driver roads, and it's just so, I don't know, stressful that sometimes I'd just be like, I just want to stay inside and stay in the warmth of my apartment because it's just too much effort to go out.
Yeah.
I wish it was a more walkable city. New York, I think, it's probably a lot easier to like travel around, but I'm still figuring out just being able to get out of my apartment more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure that speaking as another East Coast, person, I'm sure the weather is so much better.
Oh, I love the weather. Oh my God, some people, like my friends who grew up in California, they love it when it rains. I'm like, no, I am over this. I put up with this for 25 years. I'm done. I love the weather. It
Yeah.
makes a big difference, just like mentally, but also like aesthetically.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just, I can't imagine sun all day. I think I woke up and it was like cloudy and like 40 something. And I was like, dang it, another day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, another cold day. But real quick, I want to go back to what you said about, how LA can be so isolating and stuff. And for my own personal knowledge, but also for everybody else who's listening and wants to know more about like how to like kind of socialize and become an extrovert in such a big city. How did you end up making most of your like friends, well, not only connections and like people that you work with in the industry, but like also your friends? And if those people overlap, then that's cool too, but
Yeah, I mean, well, one, I don't want to make anyone not move to LA because I found it isolating. I'm definitely, I don't know, I feel like after COVID, I became like an introvert more, and I got so obsessed with work that I would just stay in. But, I made a lot of friends through work. I have some of my like nicest, greatest people I've met in Los Angeles, but a lot of them were from work. And this might be weird, but I've usually set a standard that I don't like to mix friendships and work and personal relationships and work. But, I've just met so many great people through it. So, work's great, but I think it's important to have friends that aren't just through work. So Amplify Her Voice definitely was a way I made a lot of friends, like more than I kind of thought now that I'm thinking about it. There's just so many amazing people, especially when you all share similar values that I think Amplify has, just like equality, maybe like some form of like justice and strong value in what's right and wrong. And, because of those being Amplify's values, I think I met a lot of people with similar values like that. I've met like some of the most amazing artists that I've loved for years that are now really good friends just because of our shared love of music, but also like trying to improve this industry. I've met some amazing photographers through Amplify Her Voice that are just incredible and are now really close friends. A lot of people in skill sets that I don't have. I'm not an artist, I'm not a photographer, but I think this isn't an ad to like go meet people via Amplify, but like I have met a lot of great people that, we had more to bond over than just work and music. It was just who we are as people because we're very, I don't know, social impact driven, I guess. But I mean, I'm always trying to make more friends. I want to take up like some sort of class, I don't know, something completely outside of music. Me and my boyfriend always go back and forth and we're like, oh, we need to do something not music related. And then I take up drum lessons and I'm like, okay, now we're not going to do something not music related. And then we do something else music related. But I think it is important to sort of get out of that like bubble that music's the end all be all, like especially working in music, and give yourself room to breathe and exercise a skill that is not music related. And I feel like a hypocrite because I haven't found that yet, but I definitely want to make friends through completely non-music related things.
I feel that so much because I feel like whenever somebody's like, what are your hobbies? I'm like, music? Like, I don't know. Like, and I feel like I've been in the same boat recently too, where I'm like, who am I outside of music? And I feel like that's a lot of people, like you were saying, like because of the pandemic, like we live, eat, breathe music, and not just as work, but we're also consumers because we're on our phones or we're on our laptops or whatever, and we're just consuming all this like content, like musical content, which is great because obviously we love music, that's why we're in music. But it can also be like, okay, I need to separate myself from this for a moment and let myself not think about work, because eventually like scrolling on TikTok for fun might end up turning into something about work, or scrolling on Instagram or something, especially in social media. Like,
tell me about it. Oh my God.
that separation is so hard to find.
Yes. I mean, I think especially starting out, I mean, I'm not that much older than you guys, but especially in college, that's where I was so like driven and so excited because it is exciting. But I think separating your identity from your job, from music, and even like from Amplify Her Voice, like for so long, my identity was like Amplify. And, I took things so personally and I was, and I think that's part of the insecurity that came behind, not wanting to be perceived and whatever, but, separate it and remember who you are. Cause like, I mean, it's just like you were saying, like, it's like, what do you do for fun? It's like, listen to music, play music, go to concerts. It's like, yeah, what else do you do? Someone asked me that in an interview once. They're like, right. Like, that's what everyone in music does. But like, what else do you do? I'm like, shit, like,
Wow.
nothing.
No, yeah, I think that's completely understandable too. And I was also thinking as you were saying it, I think it's very, because I'm in the exact same boat, like everything that you just said was so relatable. It's kind of scary. Like,
It has your name in it too. So
yeah,
it's like extra level.
Yeah, it's like you're so attached to it, and it's like, and like you were saying in college you were so driven. Like I've never, like I don't know if I'll be less driven after college, but like I've never been so driven than I have been in the past like 2 years, like and it's just like kind of crazy, everything, the way that it was like matching up right there. But like I also think that like when you're from like a small or and or non-music industry city, you know, like DC or Pittsburgh or San Jose, or, you know, like those places, it's like everybody asks when they say like, what do you do, and you say music, like that is so different, you know, that like when you get to, I feel like when you get to LA or New York and stuff, and they're like, what do you do, and you're like, music, it's like, okay, yeah, so do like these 100 people right here. It's like, so it's like, it's no longer so like defining as it was in like a small city. You know, and I don't know if that's what I'm gonna find, but I feel like that might be the case, you know. As to why it's become so like identifying, you know.
Definitely. I mean, I think you'll keep your drive. I still have my drive. I just need to like manage it, you know. Like make sure I'm not like working too much, and be like, okay, put the laptop down, touch some grass, you know, just like get out and like
see the sun.
My resolution for 2023 is to just like chill, like
But even what you were saying before about like how COVID has like made you an introvert, and like it's hard to like put yourself out there and stuff like that, and like go out, like I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. So I think when you were like, oh, I don't want people to think like LA is daunting, or I don't like whatever, I feel like that's an experience that a lot of people can relate to, whether they live in LA or not. I feel like it's hard for people to put themselves out there now, because a lot of our jobs are remote. Like a lot of us, we don't even have to interact with people besides like maybe our one main boss or whatever, right?
Yeah. I think one thing I've found really helpful over the last few months with putting myself out, this is like weird advice. At least I think it's weird. Maybe it's just stigmatized, but I make an effort, you know, if I'm meeting people for the first time, or even just going out and just, I don't know, feeling nervous, I just make sure I'm sober and I'm not drinking alcohol. And I feel like a lot of people can like drink more because they are anxious or nervous or whatever. But I find there's a lot more control and kind of getting over that introvertedness when I feel just more in control of the situation and like not drinking. And that's, I mean, especially in music, you'll find a lot of alcohol, good amount of drugs. And I just think for me, I'm not really into drugs at all. I'm a wine drinker, but I've found just like eliminating, you know, alcohol in professional settings or just music settings, whatever, can really help, you know, get past that social anxiety and, you know, just be more comfortable with discomfort, and then you get over it and then you own it. But that's an interesting journey I've been through right now.
Definitely. I think it's so interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of people sometimes can rely on, you know, I mean, at least I, for one, kind of realize that, you know, I'm sort of an introvert, and not even in the workplace settings, just in general, you know, like I'll just like stand there and let my friends do all the talking, and just stand there and be, you know, and like observe. But I noticed, you know, like as I turned 21, and, you know, like just understanding that like, oh, hey, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm a little bit less nervous, you know, with like one drink, you know, but so like, I definitely think that I could try that. I could take that piece of advice, you know, because it's like,
I mean, you're young now too. Oh my God. I mean, I'm only 26 only, but you know, it's a big part of our culture. It's a big part of the music. It's a big part, you know, professionally and personally. Just it's pretty entwined with the culture, you know, like open bars after shows and whatever. And I think advice I wish I knew earlier on was like, not that I'm not like, I didn't like fuck up and like do something crazy when I was drunk, but it's more just like you don't need something to feel more comfortable. And, you know, something I learn a lot in therapy is like, you know, to get over anxieties and, you know, social anxieties, whenever you have to just push through the discomfort and
no, that's
crazy stuff.
no, that's incredible advice, that I think a lot of people, especially young people, and people that are on your platform and on the Jaded platform, like are typically young people. So I think that that's definitely something to note, so I'm definitely also going to engage in that and try to do that. I have been trying to be more of an extrovert, but oh my gosh, is it hard.
Sometimes I'm just like, I don't know how to do small talk anymore. I have no idea. I don't even know if I'm an
Yeah.
introvert or like I just don't want to be there. It's,
Yeah.
it's like one or the other. I have no idea.
It's a mix. It's a mix of the two. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the small talk is just, I feel like it gets harder. Like it never ever gets easier for me. I'm like, because I'm sitting there thinking as we're discussing, and it's like, wait, did they think this is going well? Do they like this?
I
Like,
know. Yeah,
it's
I don't
crazy.
know. I find that with so many founders too, that sort of like when I speak on Amplify, I'm probably the most extroverted person you'll ever meet. But when I talk about probably anything else, I'm just like so like awkward and like
Yeah.
quiet. And I find that a lot of founders seem to have that sort of introverted, extroverted, selective introversion, I guess is what I'd call it,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I feel like maybe, I don't know, I'm not trying to like generalize, but I also feel the same way. So maybe it's like you're just like in your comfort zone and you're like,
Yeah.
more confident because you kind of know what you're talking about and know what you're doing in your own place and in your own like company. But then you go outside of it and you're like, oh my gosh, like is
Yeah.
even legit? Like
Yeah. So
I
much uncertainty in the world. It's scary.
yeah, exactly. But like along with that, and along with all that uncertainty and all that like, imposter syndrome and uncomfortableness and burnout and stuff like that, have you yourself ever gotten a little jaded in all of your music industry experience? And if so, how do you kind of come back to the work that you know and love and want to continue to do for the rest of your life?
So I was thinking about this before we started, and I don't know if I've ever really got jaded as much as just I've been so excited and enthusiastic that I burn myself out. And I think burnout is like something a lot of people have felt this year, and I just felt it so hard. New city, new job, things growing, and running your own business and having a full-time job takes a lot of time. And people are like, oh, take a break or whatever. It's like, right, but then this won't run the way it could, or it won't, optimize or whatever. I think burnout, I felt a lot, and I'm still learning how to work through it. Shout out to therapy, shout out to group therapy. Also, definitely recommend group therapy if you ever want to do it. I'm in one for perfectionism, and it's a lot of fun, but just trust yourself that, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but like one thing I learned at the end of the year is I just need to make sure I'm taking care of myself first and foremost, which people say, but what does that mean? For me, it means I want to get back to my extroverted self. And maybe that means going out when I really want to stay in, or shutting my laptop when I really want to be on it, taking a walk, sometimes literally touching grass, like getting in touch with nature again, and do all those things that make you happy. And I think that's why it's so important. Maybe even just one day at the beginning of the year or something, write down your values. Like, what are your values? To me, my values are friends, family, animals. I love animals, like cats, dogs, just like all those things that just bring you so much joy, and do more of that. And work can bring you joy. Music can bring you joy. Working in music can bring you a lot of joy, but make sure it's a piece of this pie chart of your values, not the only piece. So yeah, I guess that's my advice.
That's so wonderful. I think, a lot of people, especially in music, when you're in those first couple of years and you're just like grinding and hustling to get a job, it's like it becomes that whole pie that you were saying, like a whole piece of that
Yeah,
heart,
totally.
Yeah. So it's like remembering that, like, like that's not everything. Like that's something, and that's like something, and that's a part of your life, and that's a piece of the pie, but it's not everything. I think that's wonderful, and I don't think that we've like touched on that. We've touched on like the subject, of course, but like I don't think anybody has ever put it in that metaphor, and I think that really actually hit me right there. So,
Oh yeah.
so
And
I much appreciate it.
And I think especially like, beginning of the year, first couple months of the year when everyone's like, okay, what do I want to do differently? What can I do differently? Like no matter where people are in their journey or whatever, I think that's something that's really important to know is like you want to grind, you want to do all this, but like also, appreciate other things. If you love watching movies, go watch a movie. Like, get off your phone, get off your emails and stuff like that.
And it's hard. I mean, it's hard for me these days to literally just shut my laptop and fully zone into like a movie I really want to watch because I'm like working on Amplify stuff or I'm like doing whatever and I'm so excited to do it too.
Yeah.
And I think, you can still work hard, like I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't work hard and if I didn't put in those hours and that time. But as my therapist says, there is a difference between striving for perfectionism and striving for excellence. And, when you're striving for perfectionism, you get, imposter syndrome. You get so caught up with those little things, you forget about everything else going on and you're so obsessed with this one thing. But when you're striving for excellence, you fail sometimes, but you get back up and you just keep a better mindset about it. And I think that's really, really important.
Most definitely, 100%. I love quoting my therapist.
I know. Yeah, she should get paid more, I guess.
Right? Yeah, so I always appreciate the therapist quotes. Yeah, but I think that's wonderful. You dropped so much knowledge and so much, just wisdom, more than knowledge, like wisdom on on us and our listeners today. So, I just want to say thank you so much for taking some time out today to really, hone in on these super important topics. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, just thank you so much. And I can't wait to see what you and what Amplify Your Voice does in the coming year,
Yeah, thank you. I mean, thanks for having me. I love conversations like this, and I'm always just here as a resource to help. And we got a lot in store for 2023 that I'm really excited for, but I'm also excited for balance. So,
Yes.
a lot to be excited for, a lot to chill out about. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah. Well, this has been another episode of A Little Jaded.